In this life, welcome back to Weekend Smile, guys. Grooving there to the sounds of the reggae legend himself, the king, Mr. Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley. Now, there's undoubtedly many a thing that a regular person wouldn't know about the king of reggae. That's where someone who isn't regular comes into play. Here to share stories is Colin Leslie, former managing director of the Tough Gong Group. Good morning to you, Colin. It's good to see you.
Good morning to you. You're very kind. I'm happy to be here to share as much as I can in the limited time that we have.
We're very happy to have you because you have great stories to share. So, Colin, tell us, at what point in Bob's career did you meet him?
Well, I've known Bob for a very, very long time, but I actually started working with him, I would say, the last part of the 1970s, where it's funny because Don Taylor, his manager, knew me pretty well. And as a result, they invited me to come and help them to set up the organization that we're doing. A group of companies in those days, it was not a very big group. It was the Tough Gong Recording Studio. It was a Tough Gong Record, which was like a sales department for selling records, wholesale and retail. And Bob had actually bought a factory downtown from Mrs. Pottinger and had a pressing plant downtown. And they had one more company, I believe, Tough Gong Productions, which was based in Los Angeles. They used it for touring purposes. And there's one more after that, where called Media Aid, where he kept his money, his financial resources in the British Virgin Islands in Tortola. So that was the extent of it. Now, of course, I mean, if I have to say that they have several hundred companies, I would not be exaggerating. They have companies for, fashions, children books, films. I could go on and on. Various trust companies. It's a huge international group of companies now.
Yeah, for sure. There are several different businesses. It's really maybe one of the biggest entertainment conglomerates from this side of the world. So yes, you're perfectly correct there, Colin. Now, there's something that I remember from an interview with Lee Scratch Perry where he spoke to Bob's work ethic in the earlier part of Bob's life, saying that he, as a producer, he insisted that Bob and the Wailers, that they would have to rehearse for a whole year before their first performance. What was Bob's work ethic like when you met him and decided to be his managing director? Or working with him, yeah.
He was extremely disciplined. And I think the fact that he lived and worked in Delaware helped to contribute to that. He worked in an assembly plant for an automobile company. So he was very sort of exposed to that sort of corporate discipline in America. But he was very disciplined, and he took that same discipline into his music, because when he rehearsed with his musicians, he would rehearse for literally hours and hours and hours. In fact, they would sort of tease him and say he's a slave driver, jokingly, of course. And there's another thing again, when they were on tour in America, this is something I really enjoyed sharing. He was always the first on the bus in the mornings. And one morning, he would sometimes hide at the back of the bus. And when they came on the bus, they said, "Oh, we beat him this morning." And he would suddenly appear and say, "No, I'm here." So that spoke about his punctuality and the fact that he was always good to get going with the work,
Yeah, absolutely. Something that you just said a while ago surprised me. I did not know that he was working at an automobile factory in Delaware. So can you speak more to that? And are there anything else, stories, etc., that we may not have known about Bob?
He went to America for a while to live with his mother, and that was in Delaware. And while he was there, he got a job at an assembly plant. Bob actually was training as a youngster. In those days, you had to learn a trade. Well, Bob's trade was welding, and in fact, there was a story that he got hurt one day welding. I think a little thing went into his eye. Didn't hurt the eye, thank God. But after that, he decided, no more welding for me. It's just music. But he was, in fact, trained as a welder.
Yeah, I mean, anything else that you think people would not necessarily know about Bob that you'd like to share?
Well, there's so much things. I don't know if I have enough time.
Give me two.
Bob, first of all, is worshipped in parts of Yeah, and Nepal, they seem as the reincarnation of a Hindu god called Vishnu. Now, when I researched Vishnu, and you could research it yourself, and the listeners and viewers can research it. It says preserver and protector of the universe, and that he would be called back to restore balance to the earth and balance between good and evil. So that's the kind of high esteem that people hold Bob in. There are, of course, several Bob Marley days around the world. The one that I looked at recently was Winnipeg in Canada, as well as Toronto. But in Serbia and Croatia, in Europe, I believe it was 2000, and if I'm not mistaken, 2008, they unveiled a statue of Bob playing the guitar, and that is in the heart of Europe. It's not a very common part of Europe, this is Serbia and Croatia. And of course, there are Bob Marley days all over the world, He's worshipped, as I said, in Nepal and India. All Aboriginal people, like in New Zealand, Australia, the Hopi Indians in the Grand Canyon, they all literally worshipped him. It was very funny because Mrs. Booker, his mother, and a small group of people went to visit the Hopi Indians in the Grand Canyon. And I mean, the Grand Canyon, it's so far down into the earth that they don't have radio waves. And all these Indians were listening to Bob Marley cassettes. In those days, they were not CDs, they were like cassettes. All these Indians had Bob Marley cassettes listening to. Totally amazing.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing those with us, Colin, because if you did not share them, I don't think many of us would know. But, we talk about it all the time about how the world has really hailed Bob Marley as a true legend, a hero for many. What is the biggest misconception you think people have of Bob Marley?
The biggest what? What's the
misconception?
I don't know. People see him as a little Rasta man that smoked ganja and all that. And, it's just sort of a joke. I mean, there's a very healthy debate going on about whether or not we should make Bob Marley a national hero. And it's good. It's a good debate, very healthy. Of course, Bob Marley is already a global hero. So, he got the United Nations Peace Medal. He got the Order of Merit in Jamaica, as you know. He got the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. He got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I should show you something. I brought this along to show you. This is a gold record. The album is called Exodus. Now, Exodus was voted by Times Magazine as the album of the century. And on that actual recording is One Love, which was voted by the BBC as the song of the century.
Wow.
Now, when you think of the century to the 20th century and the millions of recordings that took place, for Time Magazine and the BBC to pick out Bob in that kind of way is absolutely phenomenal. Jamaicans don't understand this. One last thing I want to share with you before you go. The only birthday in the world that's celebrated more than the birthday of Bob Marley, and this is something that make people very uncomfortable. The only birthday that's celebrated more in the world than Bob Marley's birthday is the birthday of Jesus the Christ. I mean, it just happens to be a fact. It makes people uncomfortable, but it happens to be the truth.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you so much, Colin, for sharing those tales with us about the legend himself, Bob Marley. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning.
You're very, very welcome. And happy Bob Marley Day when it comes tomorrow.
Of course. Happy birthday to the king, the legend, Mr. Bob Marley. Guys, more Weekend Smile after the break. Stay with us.